Welcome everyone to the PJ's Cast. I'm your host Pierce, alongside of my good co-host Dylan and Jimmy. And making his yearly appearance on the show is the great Scott Powers of the Athletic. How are we doing, Scott?
Good. Thanks for having me again.
So before we get into any of the questions, I have to ask the most important questions first. How's Montreal?
It was good. I didn't get COVID, so that was a plus. There were plenty of people who came away with COVID. Yeah, it was good. It was certainly interesting from a Blackhawks perspective. From a personal and professional perspective, it was nice to see people again and get out with some fellow writers, and there's a bunch of athletic people there, so we had some work stuff to do too, just a larger scheme. But yeah, it was good. It was Montreal, and usually I'm there in the winter too, so it was nice to be there in the summer, and it was nice. And yeah, for the Blackhawks, it was interesting and hectic too. So it was a good trip. It was nice to get out again and feel like things are getting back to normal.
Yeah, me and Schmitty went to Montreal. We had a great time. I have to ask, did you go to Dunn's by chance, the restaurant? Or and if you didn't, like what restaurants did you go to?
Yeah, I think we actually ended up at Dunn's twice just because it wasn't too far from our hotel. I
Yeah.
know Lads and I went there a couple of times. And with a couple other athletic writers. Yeah, I don't even know if we went. We had an athletic dinner one place one night in the kind of like the French Quarter, and just ate meals at the Bell Center too. So, but yeah, I think Dunn's was the most frequented place we went to. It's really, it's different, and unique too, and it's certainly it's reliable. So, I think that's the place we ended up the most.
Oh, I see. Did you have any of the hot dogs at the Bell Center that they all talk about?
Yeah, they did. They had it for the media for the draft too. So yeah, no, it's definitely. I think they're not as they're good. I mean, they're it's kind of a hot dog and like like a toasted bun. So it's good. I think people may go a little bit overboard for them, but they were they certainly had them there. So yeah, I usually partake. So I'm not saying I don't. I just they might be a little bit overrated. So.
Yeah, we loved Montreal. I would love to go back to Montreal just as like even if like the draft isn't there. And how excited are you for the draft to be in Nashville? Because we're all ready to go. Like we're already planning to go, even though it's like 9 months away or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It sounds like it's gonna be chaos. So Nashville's expensive, and there aren't. I don't know. I probably should have a hotel room already booked by now, but I don't know. I like Nashville. I know it's gonna be crazy. So Montreal, like it's a little bit more spread out, and I feel like you can separate yourself. Nashville is just Nashville's Nashville. So I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun and entertaining. I just from a work perspective, it's I guess it depends on where you stay too. Like if we're out by the hotel, or out by the airport, it's a little bit further away. So I guess I usually look at all the cities kind of how it pertains to me as doing my job. Um, so yeah, I enjoy Nashville, and I certainly do when I'm usually a tourist. But I guess as a sports writer and being there for sometimes it can be a bit much, and it kind of depends on where you're staying hotel wise and how far you have to get to the rink and those type of things. So, but I'm sure from the fans' perspective, yeah, Nashville's gonna be a blast, and it's obviously a great city.
Yeah, I just thought about that from a media perspective. It's got to be a little chaotic after the games when everyone's trying to like converge to Broadway and it's right there, and it's like we got to go this way.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll definitely, we'll partake in Broadway too. It just depends on how busy it is, or I'm sure the draft it's going to be a little bit nuts. So, and then again, it just kind of if it's like a weekday during the season, sometimes you can get a decent hotel not too far away. If it's a weekend or a busy time, it's usually you stay a little bit further away, so it's a little bit longer commute to get back to your hotel. So, no, the Nashville will be fun. It'll be nice. Yeah, again, just like this schedule finally will be back to normal somewhat. Pretty much all what. So, they have the draft when it's supposed to be in free agency, and the playoffs, and to finally get kind of back on track. It'll be nice to feel some normality.
Yeah, I wanted to go to the draft as like kind of like a every couple of years thing, but like as soon as I heard the draft was in Nashville, I'm like, no, we gotta go this year
Yeah,
again.
no, it's easily inaccessible too. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, now that we got those questions out of the way, now we got to get into the boring stuff, the Blackhawks. Kind of still on the topic of the draft. I'm curious to add to see what other players were the Blackhawks interested at, like number 7 and like number 13 and number 25. And I know it's kind of hard to pick out like exact players, but I'm just wondering if like if you heard of like any other players who are interested at all the first round picks that they had.
Yeah, I know that they were looking to build a defense more than anything in this draft. So you know, they liked you know, there were two defensemen taken before you know, before their picks. So I know that they consider both those guys, and certainly hoping that someone falls. They certainly like Korchinski too. So, but there was a focus on defensemen. You know, some of it was about, you know, also not knowing where they were going to pick. So some of those trades kind of materialized later on in the day, um, um, and so I know obviously like they like Nazar there, and you know, once they got the third first round pick, they you know, they felt like they really wanted to take a chance on Renzel. You know, the fact that if they thought that if they can get two defensemen in the first round, and one of them being Renzel, who's a little bit more of a long term project, but also potentially getting a number one defenseman, and they feel like they've done that, and then adding, you know, starting with that number 13 pick, you know, it was about the centers, and then going forward in the second day, it was all about the forwards, and I think you'll see even more of that. You know, this next year's draft, obviously they. You know, they're hoping they get the number one pick, or, you know, one of those top, you know, 2 or 3 picks, and you draft a dynamic forward there. And, you know, you got another first round pick from Tampa, so you probably take another forward there. And they know that they need to stockpile forwards at this point. They feel pretty good about their defense. You know, you have Korchinski, you know, you probably have Kaiser, Del Mastro. They're really high on Vlasic. They think Isaac Phillips has a chance. You know, Nolan Allen has a chance. Who am I missing here? So there's 6, 7, 8 defensemen they like in their prospect pool. You know, there's other guys like Regula and Mitchell. You know, a few others that maybe have a shot, and I think they'll get some opportunities to play. Whether they're part of the next core, we'll see. But I think they realize that, you know, aside from Reichel, who's maybe is a top 6 forward, and maybe Nazar, now that they know that they need to get much deeper there, you know, forward wise. So I think going forward, it's gonna be forward. So, yeah, for this one, it was largely, you know, they really wanted to get a number one defenseman type in that first pick. So, you know, I think what was Nemec that went before Korchinski, and then there was I'm blanking on who the other defenseman was. So, yeah, I know they really wanted the defenseman with that first pick, and then. You know, I know they were targeting Nazar, and they thought they had a chance for him too. So, and then Renzel was the one that they really liked, but it really depended on what other picks they were going to have in that round, and how, you know, if they were only going to have 2 picks, I don't know if he would have been the second pick, or they might have waited, or they just after that point where they felt like they had 2 pretty sure things, that they felt like the third pick they can take a little bit of a chance on. And, you know, certainly knowing their timetable, you know, they're probably not going to be competitive again for 4 or 5 years. That, you know, Renzel probably fits that picture. And if he pans out, you know, obviously they'd be ecstatic, and they feel like their defensive core would be pretty solidified then. So, you know, I don't, you know, I guess I didn't ask too many questions than you were asking, but I know the defenseman especially was, you know, was their target on the first day, and they felt like doing this rebuild that they needed to do, they needed to focus on the back end, which has been you know, been the area of concern probably for the last 5, 6 years in the organization. They felt like they could solidify that, and they can really start stockpiling the forwards, and then certainly they need the, you know, they need like basically the, you know, the generational type talent to come out of this draft, and this next draft to really put someone at the top of the queue there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like you said, it's going to be a long-term process. So, you know, this isn't going to happen overnight. Like, you know, they're going to have to slowly accumulate all these forwards over the next couple of years, which it seems like they have a very good plan of doing. But that kind of leaves the on ice question, which kind of leads into my next question. Because I mean, to be blunt, they had a lot of roster turnover this summer, and a lot of players who were very liked in that locker room. And I'm just kind of curious, have you talked to any of the players this offseason, and like kind of what their thoughts are going into camp? Like, there's a lot of new faces coming in. A lot of guys are going to get more opportunity. Like, I'm just kind of wondering what the vibe is with the players going into training camp.
Yeah, I haven't talked to a whole lot of players. I know, obviously, Laz talked to Taves. You know, I had reached out to try to talk to Kane, and he really isn't interested in talking yet. So, you know, aside from that, it's been pretty quiet. But I don't think it's completely unexpected. I mean, a lot of the younger guys are probably excited about the playing time opportunity. I think Seth Jones and Cannon Taves had an idea of what was happening. I think the Brink may have been a little bit of shock to them just because they didn't expect him to go that far. But once that happened, I don't, I think everyone, yeah, I don't know. I see kind of the writings on the wall what the Blackhawks are doing, and for some guys, I think there's such a focus on guys like McCabe and even Seth Jones. I mean, guys that need to get their own, they need to get their own game straight and be the players the Blackhawks expect them to be. And then, I'm sure that, like all players, I'm sure there's a way Cannon Taves think too, that they can sort of defy people's predictions, that if they can put it together, that this team will be better than people think. So and guys like Verdomi and guys who signed this summer, I mean, they certainly knew what they were walking into, and I think a lot of guys like that who thought that this is an opportunity for me to produce and me to come into a team that maybe we can surprise some people, but also it's an opportunity for other players to get larger contracts. Domi and I guess a bunch of the guys who signed this summer are thinking that I shine this year, and then I'm probably gonna be traded at the deadline to a contender, and then I get a contract the next year. I mean, a lot of guys sign 1-year deals and short-term deals, and it's also what the Blackhawks were looking for. They're looking for guys to kind of showcase and then turn them around and trade them for prospects or draft picks too. So, I think, I don't know. I sense that there's optimism within the players just because that's built in them, and they're all kind of working hard. And a lot of guys are in Chicago now skating and getting ready for the year, and I think it's worn off a little bit from the draft's a little bit of ways away now, and people kind of had time to reflect on it, and the fact that Kane or Taves haven't asked for trade requests. I think I keep on being told that Kane says he's day to day, where he's kind of taking the situation as it goes. But I think they're kind of curious how the season's going to go, and they're hoping they can shock some people, and then maybe from there, I don't know. Yeah, even if things go well, I don't know how things play out for Cannon Taves, just because it's not like there's been a contract offered or what the future looks like for them. So unless the Blackhawks surprise and make a playoff run, I think there's some conversations that both have with the Blackhawks management about whether they want to be traded or what they want to do in their future. So, the mood wise, I don't have a full, I don't have an exact finger on, but from what I've heard from just other people that, people are skating, they're kind of focusing on themselves, knowing what the situation is, and just, Kane always thinks he can produce whoever he plays with. So I think that's the mentality they're going with, that they're going to surprise some people, as much as they surprised people last way. The other way, they're hopeful that, if
you can't really go much lower, can you?
Yeah. McCabe or whomever, kind of clicks where last year didn't. Maybe things go a little bit better according to plan, but I don't think that's what management wants. I think management was in the bottom and going to land Bedard potentially. So
yeah.
Well, Scott, I'm curious. This kind of continues on from the roster question. So there's really seemingly only about 1 or 2 spots available outside of guys on one-way deals and such. So the first question, our co-host Reagan, she can't join us today, unfortunately. She's curious as to which prospects you think might be ready for that position, who can take them. I'm curious if you think Reichel can take that spot, because I know they've preached to high heaven about being patient with the prospects, but I almost wonder with Reichel, he's put on weight. He had a great season in the AHL last year. Do you think if he really storms out of the gate like he could, do you think he gets that spot, or do you think they really want to keep him down there, season him up a bit?
Yeah, no, I think the preference right now is to keep him in Rockford, but if he plays really well in the preseason, it's hard to deny him that opportunity. So I think camp in the preseason will have a lot of weight in that decision. The other thing is they wanted to make sure that he's definitively ready. Like, they don't want him bouncing around anymore. Like last year, it made sense to give him some taste and kind of see where he was at. And certainly he excelled a lot more in Rockford than he did in Chicago. And there were benefits from him going up and down and, taking lessons and all those things. They don't want that to be the permanent development plan. Like they'd want him to, he has an idea of what it takes to be in the NHL now. And a lot of it's just, it is on the size and the physicality. And he needs to find a way to be the player he was in Rockford and Chicago. And a lot of it had to do with, just not being physical enough and not being able to kind of get away with the stuff you were doing in Rockford. So, I think the Blackhawks' preference would be to, start him in Rockford, get him going, get his confidence going, make sure that like if he's playing with more weight, that he knows how to use it effectively, and then bring him up and then keep him up for good. Like they want him to be NHL ready the next time he's up there. So maybe we'll see that in the preseason, and I think there are a handful of guys, mostly in the defense, where that they'll sort of make those decisions around. I heard there's a chance that McCabe may not start the season. There's some other health stuff going on, so we'll see if he's in camp or what the deal is there. Nothing's definitive there, so I think they're gonna potentially carry 7 or 8 defensemen. I think Regula and Mitchell are probably the two that they sort of see graduating from Rockford. Vlasic is probably the guy they're highest on in Rockford right now, or within the organization, at least sign wise. I guess the guys who are signed who are going to be in the organization at least this year. But they also, the Vlasic, they want him to send him down and make sure that he's ready. They don't want, like, as difficult as this season is going to be, they don't want that to affect. They don't want to affect guys. Like, they don't want Vlasic to be like a minus 40. Like it's not gonna do anything. For them. So, I think Vlasic, Phillips, Crevier, Galvis. I think all those guys are in Rockford. I think they think Phillips and Vlasic have a chance to be part of that next wave. I'm not sure they're not as high in Regula and Mitchell, but if Mitchell kind of turns into a player that they think, then maybe, or they once thought maybe he has a shot. I think his size is going to be detrimental, and especially as they kind of bring in that next wave of Korchinski and all these guys that he may have a harder place fitting in, especially if he's not given a top power play spot. And certainly Seth Jones is part of the future too for a while. So, I think Regula and Mitchell are probably the two defenseman prospects to watch out for. Forward wise, I think, they just they signed a couple of guys this offseason, Lupin and I'm blanking on who the guy they just signed out of Denver, but
Cole Gutman.
Yeah, Cole Gutman, and then they I think a lot of those guys are Rockford bound. There aren't a lot of guys in Rockford that were ready to take that next step other than Reichel. Like guys like Reese Johnson and Mackenzie Antwist, they're probably permanent NHL players at this point. So, Reichel's probably the only player you get really excited about. It's honestly, I'm curious to see what Mitchell looks like in the NHL. He's gotten better. It's hard to, his game is difficult to translate to NHL level, especially if he's not getting like top power play time, and that's not going to happen with Jones there, and possibly not even second power play if Caleb's there too. So it's interesting because as much as they're rebuilding, there's not a lot of emphasis on the young guys because they want those guys to spend time in Rockford, and it's a little bit different than in the past where the Blackhawks rushed a lot of those guys. So I think Rockford can be really interesting. They obviously they loaded up on AHL top type veterans like Sekera, and obviously there's a handful of guys like that where they're just really good AHL players and may get a look in the NHL, but for the most part they're there to elevate Rockford, and then they're hoping that they have a playoff team that's a really good team that can make some run, and then at the end of the season I think you see White Kaiser sign and probably join Rockford, and Del Mastro and Nolan L, and you got a bunch of I wouldn't rule out Nazar's signing at the end of the year and turning pro. That's kind of some Michigan guys have done that. So I think Rockford could be really interesting toward the end of the season too, if they're bringing some of those guys that either that turn pro or guys that are just from the CHL and can play. There even might be some international players like Ante Sorella who can come over. Or, it's an intriguing kind of next wave of prospects. So Colton Dockel, if his season's over, he'd probably join Rockford too. So, there are a lot of young guys that are probably on the cusp, but probably toward the end of the season. And then Rockford's a little bit more interesting. And then, Chicago will be more about, I guess we'll see some, I think there's some guys in the mix that they think could be part of their future, more like role players like Radish and, those type of players. And certainly they probably want to see more out of Seth Jones and guys that are, guys that they probably see as long-term pieces too. But from I guess a long answer for your short question, but Reichel and then probably the two defenseman prospects probably the ones that you'll you'll see make that jump this year.
Sure, man. And no worries. Great answer. I appreciate it. There's a lot to unpack with this prospect. Full absolutely.
I didn't know that Jake McKay was injured. Do you think that Jack Johnson had anything to do with that, or was it more just like trying to like load up on defensive depth so that way like the younger defensemen are getting pushed into a role?
Yeah, I don't know how much McCabe's like the McCabe stuff. I've only heard whispers about, so there's nothing definitive. I just heard there's a possibility. So, it's maybe that, but I think they don't want. I think it prevents them bringing up the young guys. Like they don't want to have to rely on bringing up Vlasic or Phillips before they're ready. Like even like they think Arvid Soderblom has a really bright future. And part of their concern has to be that they signed 2 goalies, or that they acquired 1 goalie and signed another. They're both injury prone, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Blackhawks picked up someone off waivers as a 3rd goalie during camp if there's someone they like, and it prevents it sort of prevents Soderblom having to being rushed before they like to promote him. So I think a lot of that's kind of this safety guards and now maybe. Not allowing Richardson as much flexibility with his roster as as a head coach would want, but it's he's also going into it knowing that there's a certain direction for the organization, and I don't think he's being judged on wins or losses, but there are some limitations to what I think the Blackhawks will have a lot of a say of Reichel or whomever is coming up. I'm sure Richardson will have a voice in it, but I think at the end of the day, it's Kyle Davidson's decision. And if it was Joel Quenneville or someone else, I think it's something different, where it's I think they have a lot more say who's playing in the NHL. And I think right now a lot of these decisions are made at a higher level because they're sticking to a long-term plan. So I don't know exactly. I think Jack Johnson was more that this was a cheap veteran, someone they could also that they probably don't mind sitting as a 7th defenseman. If you bring up Regula or Mitchell or both, and if someone is hurt, then that way Johnson can sit, and you want Mitchell and Regula playing probably too. So I think this just gives them a little bit more flexibility where they're not having to have too many emergency recalls from Rockford or having to dip into there too much. So Johnson, on the surface obviously it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think for what we're trying to do this year, it's
plays hockey.
It kind of it sort of fits with at least their plan.
My favorite thing about Jack Johnson is the only goal he scored the entire season was the breakaway goal against the Blackhawks.
Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
No shot. Wow.
He's a heck of a player.
In style.
I guess like going into this season, like there's obviously a lot of room for opportunity with this team, at least on the main roster with the guys who are there. Is there anyone that you are in particular you think could see maybe like step into a bigger role this year? Like I know like guys like Radish and Kursev started showing signs and flashes. Lafferty was showing flashes at the end of last year. Caleb Jones I thought looked pretty good towards the end of last year. Like, is there anyone that you think can maybe like take advantage of the opportunity that might be given to them?
I think it was interesting. Someone asked me to kind of construct the power play units the other day, and it was a lot harder than I thought. I think Radish in playing that bumper role, he might get a lot more opportunities. I think it'll be interesting to who they put on the left wing to fill the DeBrincat spot. There aren't a lot of shooters on this team. Maybe Domi gets that look, and I don't. It's a really rough group of like they don't have a lot of proven offensive players, and but someone's gonna be fed some really nice pucks and have an opportunity to finish. And I think there's I think the Blackhawks want to certainly promote certain players and give them opportunities in case they can move them at the deadline. So if the numbers look pretty good, that if Domi's producing, then that's probably easier to move him and trade him for some decent piece. So I think Domi makes the most sense of maybe playing with Kane on the in the power play. Certainly Taves, if he can get off to a better start. There's the fact that you remove Stroman Doc, there's room up the middle there, and Lafferty certainly he creates a lot, and there's chances there. Can he finish? Yeah, he's a little bit later in life, so like it's harder for that stuff to come by. But maybe just his confidence and putting himself, getting more ice time. Maybe he starts finishing. I'm curious about Kurashev too. It's he's still, he's pretty young still. But where does he, he's never been, he's been a really nice offensive player at a lot of different levels. Can he take that next step? I'm sure he'll get some more opportunity, and, he's sort of bounced around the lineup the last few years just because the focus was a little bit different. They're a little bit deeper. And so there were times where he played top six, other times bottom six. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for him. Yeah, I don't know. There's no one that really jumps to mind. I think the fact that someone's gonna have to play with Kane, that it creates opportunities in itself. Like you're gonna have some grade A chances that you probably didn't have with other teams or previously with the Blackhawks, because the brink hit was that person. So I think it'll be interesting to see who they put Kane with. Maybe Taves, maybe Lafferty and Domi, or I don't even know. Like the whole construction will be really interesting to me, because there aren't a lot of logical moves, especially if Reichel may not be in the mix. It's yeah, I mean, and there's obviously adding a couple offensive pieces, guys that have potential. I think that those guys will get opportunities too. So I think yeah, I don't know. I'm really, it'll be interesting, because I think before the season really goes, unless like maybe things aren't as expected, but before the season does go sideways, in which we all kind of expected to do, it's going to be interesting. Like they'll be motivated, and these guys will really want to play. And I think Richardson, I don't think he's coaching to lose, so I think they're going to try to the fact they're going to more of a zone defense, and maybe that maybe it helps guys like Murphy, and I think those guys are also being asked to do different things than in the past. And I think Murphy, you'll see him try to play more defensive hockey again. And, and there's guys that want to prove themselves, and certainly Kane and Taves are motivated too. So I think, at least that first few months of the season could be really interesting. And then we'll see what the team actually is. And if it's, like if it really goes as bad as we kind of all expect, then I'll probably spending more time covering, junior hockey in the second half of the season. But yeah, it'll be fascinating how they assemble this team, because there are guys that, like you, I'm sure a few guys will get looks with Kane during the preseason, and he clicks with someone. It's a really great opportunity for someone to run with. So, yeah, I think the preseason camp will be really fascinating from that respect. Where, there hasn't been that many times in the past where you can really kind of throw a dart and say, this guy's gonna play with this guy or that guy, and it's yeah, it'll be a fascinating preseason training camp from that respect.
For sure.
I guess the last question, and this is definitely going to be the most, probably the thing that's going to linger over the team until probably the trade deadline. Imagine, even if they don't get traded after the trade deadline, it's going to be a
Johnson.
big question. Yeah, Jack Johnson, Stanley Cup champion Jack Johnson. That's right. No, but Taves and Kane, they're in the final year of their contracts. It's what do you think the probability of them getting moved before the trade deadline is? Like, what would you give it right now at this moment in time?
Yeah, I asked them about this the other day within the team, and they, they said, there's a chance, like if Kane came to the Blackhawks today and said he wants to be traded, they could find a suitor. The price is going to have to be right. Like they sort of expect whomever's going to be interested in Kane, it's going to be a team that's in the hunt, for the cup. So you're talking about a team that's, probably going to have the 25th through 30, through the 32nd pick next year. So, that has to be one piece of it. You need that first round pick, but then it's got to be a plus prospect. It's going to have to be one of your top prospects. It's Patrick Kane, in a cup run. So, I think the Blackhawks, I don't think they just want a first round pick that's the end of a draft. Like, it's not going to look good if you trade that for Patrick Kane. So, but I don't know. From everything I heard, Kane is kind of sitting and waiting, and there is an urgency to be traded, and I guess the fact that he hasn't made the request yet, I would assume that he's waiting for the season to start and see where this goes. I don't, he's been in Chicago for a while, and he's certainly, he's comfortable here, and I think a lot of things are easy for him here, like uplift, kind of uprooting his kid now and stuff. How much does that factor into it, or You know, like I don't, you know, like the idea of a legacy being with the Blackhawks, and you know, certainly there's a lot more milestones and you know records he can reach. You know, how much is that playing a factor too? Yeah, I don't know. And then I guess if you know, the Blackhawks, you know, the Blackhawks look like they're the worst team, and Connor Bedard's coming here next year. Like, does that interest Kane too? And um, I think if Kane or Taves want to come back, it'd also challenge the Blackhawks because um, they're very mindful of what contracts are you know being given right now, and you know that kind of went into the DeBrincat trade too. Is that it didn't make sense to pay someone $10 million while you're expected to lose for 3 or 4 years. So I don't think Kane and Taves would get the kind of money they want. Could they fit it? You know, could they figure something you know else out, or just you know make it worth their while? Or you know, certainly I think the Blackhawks would be interested in Kane. Would they want Taves back? I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's really complicated, and I wish I had more of a definitive answer for you. It's it'll you know I think it's something that's you know we're all asking and we're all interested by and sort of talking to sources and I think with Taves, you know, I think he needs to produce and show that he can be a player. You know, you know someone that you're going to because regardless that you know team's going to have to take on at least half of Taves cap hits, and the Blackhawks are more likely to do that probably closer to the deadline. You know, there's an upside of having Taves until March from selling tickets to you know maybe mentoring some players and you know just kind of bringing them along. And then with Kane, yeah, I think it's a lot of it's what does Kane want, and then yeah, how do things align there? I don't know if the Blackhawks would eat half of it because it may not make as much sense. I don't, you know, like they need at least $10.5 million in cap space if they're going to eat both of their contracts, and they don't have that right now. So, you know, things change during the season, but yeah, there's so many different things that have to align. But ultimately, Kane and Taves have to be like, I want to be traded because of the no movement clauses. So, yeah, if I'm guessing now, like if the season's as bad as we anticipate, I guess I'd be surprised if Kane and Taves are here beyond the deadline. Like it just, yeah, I guess I just for them, I don't know what the motivation is. You know, like if it's knowing that how bad the Blackhawks are going to be, and then questioning like where's their salary fits in and the contract stuff. Like I there's no certainty there. So like, you know, if you can kind of say when is when, and then you know like have a farewell tour basically, and you know kind of a flat, you know, last games to the United Center, and then you know yeah, I think for the fans to have kind of have that sink into would give them some time. So I think for Kane or Taves, like it would probably be difficult to want to be traded now and not to have that farewell that they sort of probably just both desire in some way to have, you know, at the United Center. And you know, it'll certainly, you know, if both have asked for trades and we're aware of that come the deadline, I think those last few home games for them would be, you know, be something pretty special for, you know, just how they're treated and how they can kind of write their own story endings to their Blackhawks career. So yeah, we'll see. And who knows? Maybe something changes. Maybe this team is better, or maybe you know they want to be part of the long term picture. It's I think Davidson's been pretty open about how long he thinks it could be before they're good again. And you know I don't know if he said it. He hasn't really come out and said it, but I mean obviously a large piece of that is getting one of those top picks next year, and they have to be you know historically awful this year to do that. So it's yeah, for guys who are you know proven winners and guys that I think are proud players and have had to deal with a lot of losing. You know, I think they'll have some time to you know kind of reflect on everything, and then eventually you know they call their own shots. And I could see them both wanting to be traded at the deadline and have a chance to go win a cup somewhere, but also kind of you know say their farewells under their own on their terms with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I feel the thing with Patrick Kane is it's easier to see him staying, but then it's also easier to see him getting moved because I feel like Patrick Kane just consistently produces no matter what. And I feel like, and he's a playoff performer. I feel like any team, like kind of like Edmonton or the Rangers that are looking to take that next step would definitely be interested in acquiring a guy like that. And then Jonathan Taves, it's like he's been visibly like displeased with the direction of the franchise. Again, I don't talk to him every day, but just like from interviews and seeing him, he's not a big fan of
We have two guests today.
Doesn't really hide his emotions when he's on TV. Let's just put it. Never really has, and we've been for being honest. So
yeah, I think Kane's frustrated and upset. Like he certainly doesn't voice his his feelings the same way that Taves does, and they process things differently. But I don't think Kane is at all happy about, like, I
No,
mean,
yeah.
No.
to have every player that he's ever played well with sort of traded on you, and it's it's
Why
You-
wouldn't you be?
when you come out in the media and say don't trade DeBrincat and they trade DeBrincat, yeah, he's probably not too happy.
Yeah, he definitely So he definitely has a different way of processing, and doesn't really go through the media as much. And I he knows those questions may ask once camp arrives too. So I think he's had some time to sit and reflect on it, and he'll have some answers. And I think the fact they're here and they haven't asked a request, it kind of speaks for itself too, where they're both willing. Well, especially Kane. I mean, Taves probably doesn't have as much of a say in. He knows that he has to perform to create some trade value if that's going to be the case. So, I think the fact that Kane can, kind of dictate his own terms, and right now his terms seem to be that he wants to stay. So yeah, we'll see what we'll see how the season goes and how he's feeling, and then I guess the bigger thing is just I don't even know if he wants to stay, what that looks like. I'm not sure the Blackhawks do either, or Kane does. So I think maybe some of that stuff will evolve too if there is some discussions about a future contract, or and this year's gonna be fascinating just from that respect, right? Like, this is gonna be a question that it's gonna be. I'm sure that you guys will be talking about it every week, and Laz and I will be too. So it's gonna be a constant, ongoing thing, and it'll certainly help move the conversation if the hockey's bad, that we can at least have something to discuss as the year goes on.
Gonna be keeping up with a lot of Michigan and Thunderbirds games.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And Regina Pats games as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of Michigan with Fantilli and Nazar, obviously, and then even Bedard and Mitchkov, and it's even beyond the Blackhawks prospects, there's gonna be a lot of guys to follow this year. So I think
She said nothing, but she said so much.
Yeah. So, my daughter's here too. You want to say hi, Maeve? Hi.
Hi, man.
So, we're talking about starting up a milkshake podcast here soon, right, Maeve? But yeah, no, it should be it'll be an interesting year. It's certainly more drama, and I know fans aren't gonna be happy about how this year goes in a lot of ways. But I think it's it'll be different, and right now, like, I know people are upset with Davidson and certainly decisions he's made, and they have all the right to be. And I think fans really shouldn't give the Blackhawks their money this year. I don't think they're unless it's go to see Kane and Taves kind of farewell. Like, there's probably not a whole lot of reason to pay for the Blackhawks tickets, but they kind of support tanking. But Davidson's been given that leeway, and a few years from now we'll have a better idea of whether he's right or not. So it'll be it's kind of a wait and see, and
only time will tell, as they say.
yes, only time will tell. So appreciate you guys having me on again. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming on. You definitely got some stuff to take care of, so I'll let you go. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Anytime, guys.
Enjoy the season, I guess, as much as you can.
Yeah, you too. See you guys. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Care.